discover the inspiring transformation of an elderly beggar who wasted 30 years of his life. Jack huddled against the brick wall, clutching his tattered blanket as students rushed past him, their laughter and chatter forming an invisible barrier. 30 years had passed since his life unraveled, 30 years since he traded his white coat for these frayed clothes. Once a respected biology professor, now he was relegated to a mere ghost haunting the edges of the university he had once called home. It stung the years spent lecturing, igniting curiosity in young minds, now obscured by layers of neglect and indifference. At 70, he felt invisible, like the shadows that fell across the quad. He couldn't help but question how it had come to this, a life drowning in despair after the death of his son and the dissolution of his marriage. Each day, Jack's heart ached under the weight of memories lost, a prison of sorrow that wrapped around him more tightly than his threadbare blanket. He felt small, insignificant, scarcely a human in the eyes of the world bustling around him. Would they see him? Could they understand the man he had been, the one who had once reveled in the brilliance of cellular processes and the beauty of life? The feel of damp grass and the distant sound of laughter drew him back as Sarah, a spirited student, approached him one afternoon. As she engaged him in conversation as part of her community service, something flickered alive within Jack, a spark obscured for far too long. He spoke of mitochondria with an unexpected passion, his youthful enthusiasm surfacing briefly amidst years of desolation. Jack shone through, momentarily shedding the layers of neglect, feeling the warmth of acknowledgement for the first time in decades. Yet, even as their exchanges blossomed, a gnawing fear burrowed into his mind. Could he reclaim that brilliance? Would the oversight from faculty and former students, those who had once celebrated his mind but now viewed him with disdain, crush this new flame before it truly ignited? Would they ever forgive him for the fall from grace they witnessed? Anxiety whispered doubts to him. Jack battled against the yearning to step back into the academic world, confronting the suffocating belief that 30 years spent in obscurity had erased his contributions. He felt the room close in on him, each student's laughter echoing like a taunt. He could feel the tension rising. Moving deeper into his research, he isolated himself among dusty books and crumpled papers, wrestling late into the night against the biases lingering in the hearts of the very faculty who had once championed him. Jack dedicated himself fully, but with every rising hope came the darker undercurrents of dread. Would they ever accept him back into their fold? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The culmination of months spent revisiting his former genius landed him at a prestigious university gala, where his findings would be unveiled to an audience that had written him off. Jack approached the podium with a pounding heart, the weight of history pressing heavily on his shoulders. Tension crackled like static in the air as he scanned the room, noting the shifting gazes, some skeptical, others curious. Clenching his fists, he wondered if they could see the brilliance flickering within him, or if they only beheld the frail beggar they had long since dismissed. A sudden commotion at the back of the room broke his focus, sending a tremor of unease coursing through him. Jack's breath quickened as the uncertainty swelled. This was his chance to reclaim his legacy, but was he prepared to confront the harsh judgment of those who had cast him aside? Would he find redemption or be consumed by their scorn? The air hung thick with anticipation, leaving Jack to ponder, as shadows loomed large over him. Could anyone truly rise from the ashes of despair? As Jack stood before the audience, the spotlight illuminated the lines etched on his face, each wrinkle a testament to a life spent in turmoil. He could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on him as the murmurs swirled around the room. He had envisioned this moment countless times, a confident return to the stage, captivating the minds that once revered him. Now, however, the familiar sense of dread settled in his stomach like a lead weight. Yet, amidst the chaos in his mind, a flicker of determination ignited. Jack inhaled deeply, his breath steadying him. He remembered Sarah's curiosity and enthusiasm, the simple joy in sharing his knowledge. Perhaps this was less about proving himself to others and more about reclaiming a piece of himself. "Good evening," he began, his voice wavering slightly at first, but growing firmer with each passing word. "I am Jack Malone, and tonight, I would like to share my thoughts on mitochondrial function, a subject that has always resonated deeply with me." The moment he mentioned his field, he felt the connection rekindle within him. The biological processes he had once dissected with passion were still there, nestled deeply in his core. As he navigated through his presentation, however, those familiar doubts began to resurface. He clenched his jaw, not wanting to show weakness. The room bore witness to his struggles, and the question rattled in his mind: were they interested in learning or merely there to watch him fail? Jack reminded himself that the biology he loved could bridge the gap he felt from those in the audience. He focused, articulating complex concepts with clarity, and for the first time in years, he saw interest flicker in a few faces before him. Gradually, he felt the walls of perception begin to shift. The room transformed into a harbor for ideas rather than skepticism. Jack's confidence surged, allowing him to engage the audience. They were not just conduits for judgment but vessels of curiosity. Some leaned forward, eager to absorb what he had to say, while others appeared genuinely amazed that the frail figure before them could express such brilliance. With the glow of rejuvenation washing over him, Jack dove deeper into his research, layering in anecdotes of how he had come to rediscover his passion. He painted a picture not just of scientific principles, but of his journey, a journey marred by personal tragedy but now blossoming with hope and drive. The transition from desperation to aspiration turned the narrative captivating, and for the first time in decades, he rekindled the passion that had once made him a beacon in academia. As he concluded, the applause began to swell, syncing with the rhythm of his quickening heartbeat. The room exploded in approval, and for a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to bask in the glow of their appreciation. But just as the intensity faded, a face from the crowd caught his attention, a former colleague, Dr. Graves, whose critical scorn haunted Jack's past. He was a constant reminder of what Jack had lost. The unease crawled back into Jack's psyche, eroding his confidence as he noticed the judgment in Dr. Graves' expression. In an instant, Jack felt the ground shift beneath him. The audience had responded positively, yet that one disapproving gaze loomed over his success like a dark cloud. Would he ever escape the shadows of his past? Could vindication for what he had accomplished truly drown out the judgments of those who watched him fall? The weight of uncertain redemption anchored him. Jack stepped back from the podium, feeling the aftershocks of anxiety ripple through him. He had lit a spark within the audience, but would he have the strength to extinguish the lingering shadows of his previous life? As the event concluded and the audience filed out, Jack stood alone for a moment, his heart racing with an amalgam of exhilaration and fear. The battle for his legacy was far from over. A new challenge awaited him, one that would test his resolve even further, the reckoning with the very person who had been the architect of his past dismissal. He would need to confront Dr. Graves, not just for closure, but to truly reclaim his place in the world he had once illuminated. The moment had come to face the ghosts of his past. Would convergence lead to confrontation, or an unexpected ally in reclaiming his future? As the final applause faded, Jack felt the echo of the audience's approval linger in the air. But even as pride threatened to swell within him, the specter of Dr. Graves loomed larger. With each passing moment, the notion of confronting his former colleague morphed into an obligation, a necessary confrontation to extricate him from the burdens of his past. He moved toward the back of the hall, where Dr. Graves stood, his arms crossed, the heavy brow appearing perpetually disapproving. For a fleeting second, Jack considered retreating, hiding in the shadows of the stage like he had done for so many years. However, a surge of resolve thrummed in his veins. For too long, he had allowed others to dictate his worth. Tonight, he wouldn't shy away. "Dr. Graves," Jack said, forcing the name past clenched teeth, "I'd like to talk to you." Graves turned slowly, surprise mingling with skepticism on his face. "Jack. It's been years." Jack stiffened at the casual dismissal in his tone. The years had not chipped away at his own determination, they had only solidified it. Yes, it has. And maybe it's time we addressed some of that history. Graves' sharp eyes narrowed. History is a dangerous playground, Jack. Be careful where you tread. The retort stung, but Jack clasped his hands tightly together to quell the tremor of doubt that threatened to seep through the cracks of his facade. You've seen me on stage tonight. I'm not that broken man anymore. I want to hear your thoughts, I want the truth. Truth is subjective. Graves shrugged slightly, his defiance palpable. You have a way of spinning narratives now. Jack inhaled, grounding himself. You think I'm here to wield stories like a shield? I want closure. You didn't seek closure when you left academia, Jack. The words sliced through him, sharper than he expected. Why should this be any different? The accusation hung heavy, and Jack felt cracks splitting the foundation of his waning confidence. He momentarily let his guard drop, confronting the unyielding truth he had avoided for so long. I left because I lost faith in myself. I thought if I vanished, the pain would too. The same pain that made you who you are? Graves countered, his tone now laced with an unexpected curiosity. Resilience does not manifest without hardship. The unexpected acknowledgement seemed to crack open a door within Jack's psyche. For the first time, he recognized that his suffering had not defined him. Rather, it had transformed him into someone stronger. You think I should just accept that I was the victim of my circumstances? Graves stood silently, his expression shifting. Perhaps the confrontation was evolving not just a battle of wills, but a dialogue ripe with possibilities. No, Jack. I think you should embrace it, leverage it to propel yourself forward. Jack took a step closer, the world around him blurring as his focus sharpened on Graves. I want to prove I can still contribute meaningfully. I need to show you and myself that I'm not just a shadow of what I was. Prove to me? Or prove to yourself? That probing question hung in the air, forcing Jack to confront the essence of his ambitions. It wasn't simply about showcasing his capabilities to Graves, it was about reclaiming his agency, redefining his purpose. As the tension stretched between them, Jack felt the flickers of a burgeoning alliance. I want you to consider collaborating once more, perhaps mentoring me in a new project? A chance for mentorship to weave gold from this history we share. Graves raised an eyebrow, half intrigued, half skeptical. And what makes you think I'd want to guide a man who abandoned ship? Because it's time to reshape not just how you see me, but how I see myself, Jack replied, an undeniable fire igniting in his chest. I want to be a man haunted by you anymore. I want to be the one who finally pulls the weight of my legacy into the light. The air crackled as the challenge simmered, and Graves' expression shifted yet again. Perhaps the confrontation wasn't merely a reshaping of their relationship. It was the catalyst Jack needed to solidify his claim to his own narrative. However, Jack thought about the weight of accountability he had just proposed. Was he truly ready to dive back into partnership, especially with a man who once epitomized his greatest fears? The questions dogged him, and the uncertainty settled in, though this time, it felt different. It demanded deliberation and determination, pushing him toward an unfolding path that continued to challenge his resilience. As they stood on the cusp of an unexpected reconciliation, Jack knew that while the future remained uncertain, he had taken the first step toward genuinely reclaiming his legacy. But what if this partnership brought with it unpredictability he wasn't prepared for? Would the exploration of shared histories reveal more about himself than he had ever considered? The silence stretched, raw and taut, an invisible tension binding Jack and Dr. Graves. Jack's thoughts swirled in chaos. He craved this partnership, yet fear prickled at the edges of his ambition. What if opening this door nudged him back into a shadowy world he fought so determinedly to escape? The echoes of past failures whispered around him, daring him to back down. Tell me, Dr. Graves finally said, his voice low, unyielding. What would you expect from this mentorship? What would it look like to you? Jack's heart raced as he grappled with the enormity of the question. I envision developing a project that incorporates everything I've rediscovered about myself: the power of narrative, the reclamation of my past, my pursuit of truth. Perhaps, A series of lectures, workshops. Something impactful, he articulated, his voice steadier now as conviction seeped into his words. But that requires more than motivation. It demands perseverance. Can you commit to that? Graves pressed, scaling back the intrigue and piercing right to the crux of Jack's capability. I can, Jack declared, the weight of Graves' gaze igniting an unanticipated fervor. Yet the turbulence inside him still lingered. His awareness of past patterns loomed larger. There were moments in recent years when doubt had swept over him like a fog, occluding his vision of success. Could he withstand the trials and commitments that accompanied reclaiming his voice? Dr. Graves studied him, seeking cracks in the facade. You speak passionately, but words can be fleeting. When the pressure begins to mount, will you still stand upright? Or will the remnants of your insecurities push you back under? Are you questioning my resolve? Anger surged within Jack as the fear he fought against shifted to confrontation. I'm asking for your guidance, not your judgment. Your defensiveness suggests otherwise, Graves countered, an eyebrow raising in challenge. With fire in his chest, Jack recognized this moment as both a confrontation and a trial. Did he truly expect anyone to believe in him if he fought so fiercely against his own truth? If he wanted to bridge the gap between his past and his future, he had to confront the darkness that still lingered in his mind. He mustered a steadying breath. No. I'm asking for support. But you're right. I have to prove I can embrace the pressure without succumbing to the shadows. Silence filled the space as Jack considered his next move. Exploring this partnership with Graves now felt like stepping onto a high wire, his safety net taken away. An unfamiliar thrill surged through him. The fact that he dared to envision this upward shift signaled a shift in his self-perception. What if we start small? Jack suggested cautiously, leaning into the challenge instead of shying away. You could guide me through a preliminary framework. We could outline the project as scope, explore potential topics, assess what credibility I can genuinely bring based on my experiences. From there, we can expand as suitable. Graves seemed to contemplate Jack's proposal, narrowing the gap between judgment and curiosity. There was a flicker of interest in his eyes, a hint that perhaps, for the first time, he might consider fostering Jack's initiative rather than dismantling it. Small steps might give you the space to reveal your true self, eventually, Graves conceded. But bear this in mind, the moment you falter, I won't let you retreat. This journey demands accountability. Jack felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Accountability. He hadn't anticipated that it would be such an integral aspect of rekindling his path forward. It ignited both excitement and dread. The fear of letting Graves down kindled a deeper determination within him. Understood, Jack responded, his tone firm. I'm ready for that challenge. I won't be just seeking approval. I will express my voice. As the momentum shifted, Jack glimpsed a path forward. The prospect of working with Graves now hinted at discovery rather than defiance. Perhaps he could unravel the invisible threads linking his past to an uncharted future. But a nagging doubt persisted, troubling the edges of this nascent resolution. What burdens from his past might rise again when faced with the realities of growth? Would Graves push him too far, forcing him to confront the very shadows he sought to escape? Those looming questions would not settle easily. But with the flicker of possibility before him, Jack felt prepared to find out. As the two men stood together with caution, ambition, and an air of impending transformation, the stakes had been raised. Jack sensed that in the unraveling of their partnership, revelations awaited, and the exploration of their intertwined pasts held promises he couldn't yet fathom. What truths about himself would be unearthed in this pursuit of accountability, and would he be prepared for the transformation waiting at the journey's end? The days that followed became a blur of excitement and trepidation for Jack. With each sunrise, the possibilities of collaboration with Dr. Graves grew clearer, yet so did the shadows of apprehension lurking in the corners of his mind. Every morning, as he brewed his coffee, he scrutinized the bubbling thoughts bouncing around inside him. Was he truly ready to face the tightrope of accountability? Would he rise above the expectations set before him, or would he crumble, sitting at his desk one afternoon, crumpled sheets of paper scattered like fallen leaves, he finally built the resolve to sketch out the outline of his project. The laptop flickered to life, the glow illuminating the tangled mess of his ideas. As he typed, the words melded into cohesive thoughts, weaving the narrative that held his truth. At that moment, clarity pierced through his fog of self-doubt. Each keystroke was a step, a small victory against the pervasive insecurity that gripped him. Jack had envisioned this project as more than just lectures. It was a platform to reclaim his narrative and redefine himself not just as a facilitator but as a storyteller. What better way to confront the shadows, he murmured aloud, than to unveil them under bright lights. An idea took form. He would share his own journey of recovery, the stumbles along the way, the lessons, and eventually, the triumphs. He smiled at the thought of encouraging others to face their nuances while revealing the beauty of resilience. Yet, even as he solidified these thoughts into a tangible framework, the specter of doubt prowled around his shoulders, whispering insidious questions. What if the audience rejected him? What if his past still had teeth sharp enough to bite back? Jack knew he couldn't afford to let those remnants fester in the back of his mind. He needed to confront them, to rewrite his story, not as a victim, but as the transformation of a man who was learning to embrace his flaws. With renewed determination, Jack approached Dr. Graves for their first mentorship meeting. The anticipation was electric. Jack clutched his printed outline tightly, nerves interwoven with excitement coursing through him. Would Graves appreciate his direction, or would he dissect it as he had before? When they met, the air was thick with unspoken expectations. Jack placed the paper on the table, his heart drumming loudly in his chest. Dr. Graves raised an eyebrow as if reading the tides of Jack's confidence. "Let us hear it," Graves said, leaning back, arms folded, assessing. Jack took a deep breath, letting the words spill forth like an uncoiling spring. He expounded upon his idea, expounding the importance of personal stories to create connection, the power of vulnerability in professional spaces. With each continued articulation, Jack began to feel the rawness seep away, replaced by a new kind of fervor, a belief that he had valuable insights to offer. Yet, Graves' penetrating gaze never wavered. "Interesting perspectives," he said, his voice measured. "But what ensures that this vulnerability doesn't turn into a risk? How would you safeguard your own psyche while addressing such personal and heavy subjects?" Jack paused, caught off guard. I hadn't considered that. But perhaps embracing this journey could help others. If I expose my fears, maybe I can turn my scars into strength, or you could expose yourself to further pain, Graves interrupted gently. This realm requires boundaries. It's easy to get lost in the act of narrative, but without personal safeguards, vulnerability can become your enemy. A wave of realization crashed over Jack. The reassurance that revelation could morph into reinvention was pivotal. But he now understood that grounding himself was equally vital. He needed to delineate what stories he could share and, importantly, which ones he should leave untested until he felt truly ready. "What I need," Jack mused aloud, "is to find a balance. I must own my narrative, yet maintain control over which parts one expose." Dr. Graves nodded, the faintest glimmer of approval flickering in his eyes. "There lies the root of your journey, understanding your limits while navigating expansion. This is the essence of accountability." Jack's heart swelled with newfound clarity. In that moment, he caught a glimpse of himself not as a victim of his past, but as an architect of his own future. He relished the discomfort of his unresolved past that now beckoned him to explore, refine, and share his lessons. Armed with accountability and clarity, he felt an invincible sense of purpose. Yet, the question echoed hauntingly, was he prepared for what lay ahead? The next challenge awaited. As he stood on the brink of this nascent chapter, a sudden realization struck. Potential pushback loomed from unexpected places. What if the very people who had witnessed his struggles were among the first to challenge him? As anticipation lit a fire within him, Jack set forth, ready to embrace the demand of his emerging identity and confront whatever fears awaited him. The next step would forge his path, and the specter of those paths triggered not just anxiety, but a fierce urgency to clarify who he now aspired to become. Could he truly withstand the judgment of those from his past? Would they accept his growth, or merely see him through the prism of their memories? Each day that followed his meeting with Dr. Graves became a delicate dance for Jack, teetering between vulnerability and the need for self-preservation. Conversations with acquaintances about his project stoked both fear and exhilaration. He often found himself replaying Graves' words in his mind, understanding your limits while navigating expansion. The more he pondered, the more determined he became to confront his demons while crafting a narrative that empowered him. He made a decision. Jack would approach his personal stories like an artist curating a gallery. What pieces would he display, and which ones would he keep hidden, shrouded in mystery? Each recollection represented a brushstroke in the larger portrait of who he was becoming. He spent hours drafting potential paths of his narrative, the early days of his struggles, moments of isolation, the people who'd turned their backs, and finally, the slow climb to self-acceptance point. One evening, sitting at his desk, a shiver of a memory pulled him back, a time when rejection felt like an old friend. As he began to write about a particularly painful chapter in his past, doubt wormed its way into his thoughts. What if they laugh? He reflected. Or worse, what if they feel pity? Uncertainty gnawed at him, challenging his resolve to share his history, but he knew he needed to speak his truth. Jack took a breath, forcing himself to confront the undeniable dread. Writing was his catharsis, and so he penned his thoughts candidly, the ink flowing freely like a stream of consciousness. He captured anguish but paired it with sparks of resilience. Sifting through his emotions, he identified key lessons learned, the strength found in vulnerability, and the power of community once he dared to reach out. However, composing these intimate reflections meant flirting with his emotional boundaries. Each carefully crafted line was a ripple in the still waters of his past, dredging up what had long lain dormant. Jack learned that the stories filled with despair must be juxtaposed with hope to retain balance. Embracing his flaws was not merely an act of exposure but a transformative experience. The following week, he attended a local support group, a gathering that was both comforting and daunting. Standing in front of the small circle, he felt akin to a tightrope walker, balancing the weight of authenticity against the lingering remnants of fear. His stomach fluttered as he shared his first exposure, the beginnings of addiction, a gamble that separated success from failure. Guided by Dr. Graves' insights, he navigated the narrative of his downfalls intertwined with the rising phoenix of his recovery. As others listened, he felt the ebb and flow of empathy wash over him. Some smiled while others nodded, their expressions betraying a shared understanding of the complexities of anguish and healing. The resonance of his story ignited flickers of acceptance within himself. With each testimony, Jack discerned the power of communication, how stories shared acted as bridges instead of barriers. But the feedback he received was mixed. Some reactions were enlightening, others unsettling. An attendee challenged him on the notion of presenting one's vulnerabilities as a strength. What about accountability? She argued. Isn't it risky to share stories without protecting yourself? The tug and pull of open discussion unsettled Jack. No one had ever questioned him so openly, and he felt exposed yet invigorated. Days turned to weeks, and every interaction fueled Jack's desire to embrace this unfiltered journey further. Each conversation acted as a trowel, helping him build the intricate wall of mental fortitude that would uphold his resolve. Yet he still pondered his past, and the judgment awaiting him, relatives and peers who might draw conclusions based on old memories rather than the man he was becoming. With a sense of urgency fueling them, he crafted a list of invitees for his first presentation, faces from history always tethered to the story he now sought to tell. As he stared at their names, his thoughts spiraled. Would they see the growth and transformation, or would they remain anchored in their perceptions? All at once, the question thrummed in his veins, restless and potent. Could he stand before them, his vulnerabilities on display, and not buckle? The moment to confront his past was drawing near, but would he be fortified by self-belief or brought low by old anxieties? In that instant of clarity, Jack understood. The moment was close for the real test, a confrontation with those who knew him best. How would he navigate the fragile line between past wounds and present strength? Jack woke to the relentless buzzing of his alarm, the incessant sound breaking through the layers of anxiety that had blanketed his thoughts throughout the night. He eased himself into a sitting position, the cool morning air brushing against his skin, awakening his senses. Today marked the day of reckoning, a confrontation with his past, with those who had witnessed both his darkest moments and his most tentative steps toward the light. He slid his feet into worn slippers and moved to the kitchen, where the familiar scent of brewing coffee wafted through the air. The ritual felt grounding, a moment of peace before the storm. As he stirred cream into his cup, he allowed himself to ponder the people he had invited, longtime friends, old acquaintances, some who had drifted away silently, and others who had caused him pain. Each name brought back a rush of memories, some warm, others bitter. Would they judge him? Would they even recognize the man he had become? The steady rhythm of coffee pouring into the cup mirrored his racing heart, propelling him forward while simultaneously holding him back. Jack understood the need to articulate his journey, yet each sip revealed the nervous energy that threatened to uncoil. Today wasn't merely about his past. It was about declaring the truth of his existence to the world that had once overlooked him. As the clock inched closer to the hour, Jack dressed with deliberate intent, choosing attire that balanced the informal comfort of his everyday surroundings with the seriousness of the occasion ahead. He wanted to feel both at ease and confident, a reflection of the growth he had fought so hard to cultivate. Arriving at the venue, Jack's pulse quickened. He took a moment to breathe deeply, ensconced in the chatter of an unexpected crowd, families gathered, and friends laughing, a patchwork of human connection. The atmosphere felt alive, laden with hope and anticipation. Yet nerves twisted in his gut like a serpent as he spotted familiar faces. Their eyes bore witness to his former self, the ones saturated with doubt and fear. When his turn came, the fluttering in his stomach morphed into a frosty knot of confrontation. With shaking hands, he approached the podium, the stage feeling both empowering and vulnerable as the audience settled into a hush. Jack focused on his breathing, centering himself in the present moment. He glanced at the friendly faces of those who offered him smiles, as if they were silently affirming that he was ready. "My story is more than a narrative of defeat," he began, voice steady but laced with emotion. "It's about reclaiming my life." With every word, he peeled back the layers of his trauma like an onion, revealing the sweet core within a self that had often been clouded by doubt and resentment. As Jack unfolded the tale of his battles with addiction, his voice strengthened. He shared truths that had once shackled him, letting the weight of vulnerability spill from his lips. The air thickened with empathy as he spoke of loneliness and the shame that once defined him. But within the story, he also interjected moments of clarity, the instances where hope flickered in the darkness, where strangers turned into allies, and where he made a conscious choice to turn his life around amidst the chaos. His narrative ebbed and flowed like the ocean tide, surging forward with determination. Yet, as he reached the climax, where he stood as a living testament to resilience, he felt a presence in the back of the room. A piercing gaze locked onto one of the faces from his past. The weight of judgment hung in the air, sharp and palpable. Jack faltered for just a breath, caught in the crosshairs of recollection, but he steadied himself, focusing on the collective energy in the room. "Every wound has a story, but those stories do not define us," he declared, his voice louder now, resonating with conviction. As the presentation concluded, applause erupted, warm and generous, yet Jack felt an unsettling mix of triumph and trepidation simmering beneath the surface. Despite the supportive reactions, the weight of that stare lingered, an unresolved chapter from his past that awaited closure. The path toward understanding and acceptance wasn't linear. Jack realized there would be hurdles ahead, moments where doubt might reappear to unnerve him. But the horizon spoke of explorations yet to come, challenging him to embrace the complexity of his journey while leaving room for growth. There, amid the aftermath of his exposed soul, he stood at the edge of rediscovering himself. What would happen when he confronted that unyielding gaze directly? Would confrontation offer him liberation or haunt him further? Time beckoned for answers, igniting a new resolve within him to seek them out. Jack stepped off the stage, the euphoria of completion colliding with an unsettling apprehension. He scanned the room, searching for that piercing gaze that had briefly shattered his confidence. The applause faded into the background as he sidestepped congratulatory remarks from friends and acquaintances, each pat on the back a reminder that while he had spoken his truth, the battle was still far from over. Distant sound waves of laughter, chatter, and clinking glasses swirled around him, creating a cocooning buzz. He felt out of place, a misfit in a world he had once known so well. The celebratory atmosphere, while welcoming, clung to him with the weight of expectation. Jack needed clarity, a moment to refocus before he could navigate through the remnants of his presentation. He slipped outside into the crisp air, the transition from warmth into chill sharpening his senses and providing a necessary jolt to his thoughts. The breeze whispered reminders of his journey, wrapping around him like a supportive embrace but still bringing forth the solemnity of the confrontation that awaited him. He leaned against the wall, drawing a deep breath, seeking to calm the chaotic thoughts swirling in his mind. What would he say to that gaze? Would words suffice to bridge the chasm years of silence had carved? Each second stretched thin as he wrestled with the prospect of facing his history. The memory of his past self, the one suffocated by addiction and his own choices, loomed large. Was he truly ready to confront it, or was fear still a reluctant companion on this path to healing? He closed his eyes momentarily, reflecting on the narrative he had shared moments before. Vulnerability had been his ally, a light illuminating the darkness he had once inhabited. But now, with that light came the shadows of judgment. Jack needed to own both his past and his growth before he could hope for any reconciliation. As he pondered these thoughts, a flicker of familiarity caught his attention. A figure emerged from the crowd, squeezing through the throng of bodies and making their way towards him. Jack's heart raced as recognition settled in. It was Lucas, a childhood friend he had not seen in years. Nurtured by nostalgia, Lucas once shared birthday cakes and sleepovers with him, the innocent days now distant memories overshadowed by choices and distance. Jack? Lucas's voice trembled slightly, uncertainty threading his inquiry. Jack's throat tightened, caught between a rush of emotions. He had not anticipated this conversation, one that felt ripe with possibilities yet heavily fraught with unresolved tension. Lucas, he finally responded, his voice steadier than he felt inside. I saw you speaking. You were incredible. Lucas replied, an earnestness in his tone that made Jack's chest swell with both pride and fear. I didn't know about everything. You come so far. Thank you, Jack murmured, the compliment hanging in the air between them, equally comforting and disorienting. Can we talk? I need to understand. Lucas continued, taking a small step closer. Jack considered this invitation. It was a potential doorway to healing, to bridge past grievances with newfound understanding. But it also hinted at confrontation. What secrets lay behind Lucas' eyes? Would he challenge the narrative now being rewritten, or support this evolution? The moment stretched as Jack weighed his options. Was he ready to share the raw details of his journey with someone who had seen the worst of him? Would this connection fortify his resolve or unearth wounds he had yet to address? The tension coiled in his gut as he met Lucas' steady gaze, feeling the pull of decision frame his next steps. Let us go somewhere private. Jack finally exhaled, the choice igniting a surge of commitment within him. Stepping back into the unknown, he was not merely returning to face the past. He was inviting his friend into the progression of his life, a step towards both understanding and acceptance. As they moved together, Jack felt a mixture of trepidation and determination. What revelations awaited him in this dialogue? The shadows still festered, and the weight of their histories intertwined, yet the promise of confronting them beckoned with an allure both terrifying and necessary. The road ahead lay uncertain, but Jack was resolved to walk it, one courageous step at a time. What truths would emerge as he ventured deeper into this uncomfortable yet necessary confrontation? Jack and Lucas navigated through the noise of the gathering, the relentless pulse of the crowd receding as they found a quiet alcove away from the jubilant gathering. The contrast between the raucous celebration and the serene atmosphere felt almost jarring. Jack leaned against the cool stone wall, becoming acutely aware of the gravity weighing down the moment. The air around them hummed with unspoken words. Are you okay? Lucas asked, genuine concern etched on his face. Jack nodded, though the tightness in his chest betrayed him. This feels like a lot, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. To be back here, sharing everything. Lucas searched Jack's eyes, evidently sensing the underlying turmoil. You've changed. I mean, really changed. When I saw you speak, it was as if you had bared your soul out there. I want to understand how you went from where we were to where you are now. The question hung in the air, amplifying the enormity of what they were about to tackle. Jack felt vulnerable, stripped of the defenses he had built over the years. But deep down, there was an emerging resilience, a quiet acknowledgement that this moment mattered profoundly. I used to be lost, Jack started, hesitating as memories threatened to overwhelm him. Addiction was a black hole. It consumed everything. Friends, family, I barely recognized myself. It wasn't all bad, Lucas interjected, his tone gentle, almost nostalgic. We had good times. Jack flinched at that. The memories of laughter mixed with the memories of pain were a whirlpool pulling him under. We did. But it was overshadowed. He inhaled deeply, steeling himself. It took hitting rock bottom for me to see it. I had this moment a kind of awakening. I realized I had to confront the truth of who I was. Lucas leaned closer, curiosity and empathy intermingling in his gaze. And that made you want to talk about it? To share your story? Jack nodded, pushing past the discomfort. I didn't want anyone else to feel alone in their darkness, or think it's impossible to change. I've learned that vulnerability is strength, that sharing my truth could help others. Lucas's eyes glistened with understanding. That's powerful, Jack. It takes guts to be that open. Does it? Jack felt a flicker of doubt surge within him. Or is it just masking the fear of rejection? Like now, what if this person you remember me as doesn't fit this new narrative? That fear is normal, Lucas replied, his voice calm yet urgent. We're all shaped by our pasts. But what matters is who you choose to be now. Jack snapped his gaze back to Lucas, the weight of those words settling in. A flicker of recognition sparked in his mind. This wasn't just about his past or even about sharing his journey. It was about reshaping who he was with each conversation, each acknowledgement of past failures. It could redefine how he understood connection itself. Thanks for saying that, Jack murmured, letting the warmth of the moment wash over him. But the comforting exchange was soon shadowed by an underlying tension. Doubts still lingered, and unfinished narratives in both of their lives still loomed. Are you ready to dig deeper? To confront what lies beneath? Lucas asked, breaking through Jack's reverie. The question surged like ice water through Jack's veins. Confrontation, yes, that's what this moment required. The past wasn't merely a series of events to recount, but layers of choices and consequences waiting to be unearthed. Each word, each admission could propel him forward or pull him back. I'll try, Jack finally replied, determination mixing with trepidation. But was it enough? Would Lucas be ready for the full weight of the truth, to see the raw, unvarnished sections of Jack that were still healing? As they stood facing one another, the air thick with anticipation, Jack felt the currents of a life-changing conversation about to unfold. Suddenly, the chatter intensified from inside, a loud cheer erupting from the revelers. It broke the moment, jolting Jack fully back into the present. The noise was a reminder of everything that lay before him and the connections yet to be explored. Let us go back, Lucas suggested, sensing the shift. There's a reason you spoke tonight. You should embrace that. Jack uncertainly nodded, but something deep inside insisted there was still work to be done before he could fully step into that spotlight again. What awaited him in this dialogue was critical, yet it felt as if each revelation came with both risk and opportunity. Wait, Jack said suddenly, a thought crystallizing in his mind. There's something I need to tell you first, something I haven't revealed. The gravity of his revelation hung heavily in the air between them, a promise that what came next would transcend mere nostalgia. What truth was he about to unveil, and could it reshape not just their relationship but also Jack's understanding of himself in whole new ways? Jack stood at the precipice of a new beginning, the silence enveloping him like a warm embrace in stark contrast to the tumult of his past. Months of fervent work, vulnerability, and determination had led him here, but it was at this moment, standing with Lucas in a quiet alcove, that he truly began to comprehend the depth of his transformation. Before I share anything further, I want you to know how vital this is for me. Jack's voice trembled slightly, a testament to the authenticity he had found in recent months. I've spent so long running from my past that it feels like an anchor, and tonight I want to cut those ties. Lucas nodded, his eyes open with encouragement, lending Jack the strength to delve deeper. Whatever it is, I'm here, he reaffirmed. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the collective weight of his shared truth building within him. I've clung to this story of failure, allowing it to define who I am. But now, I realize that I am not just the shell of that man who fell from grace. I'm the man who has risen upwards, driven by every moment of despair into rediscovery of self-worth, he articulated. With those powerful words, layers of fear began to peel away. The path he had walked was extensive, but as he shed light on the darkness, he felt liberated. I lost my way due to addiction, but I found clarity within that struggle. I learned that voicing my pain transforms it into power, he continued, surprising even himself at the clarity he wielded. The darkness had been blinding, but now, exposure revealed the clarity of purpose, ambition, and resilience jostling for prominence in his new life. No longer will I be shackled to the stigma of failure, Jack asserted. I refuse to allow it to define my worth anymore. My vulnerabilities are strengths, not weaknesses, and sharing my journey can empower not only me but those who listen too. A brief flicker of uncertainty shadowed Lucas' face, but that was replaced by a glint of admiration. Jack, I didn't quite realize the battle you've waged. It's remarkable, truly. You deserve this empowerment. His friend's affirmation acted as fuel for Jack's conviction. It's time to embrace accountability, he declared firmly, the words echoing with newfound solid confidence. No more hiding, but also no more allowing others to judge me based on my past. My narrative is mine to share. The moment stretched, bridging the gap between two friends, as Jack continued, I want us to share not just memories but a journey forward, a mutual exploration of growth. Confronting each other on where we both stand and how we can uplift one another on our paths. Lucas took a step closer, eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. I would love to collaborate on that, he replied. Let us do this together. In this pivotal exchange, Jack had found not only the essence of accountability but true allies in his ongoing metamorphosis. It became evident that the doubts which had lingered around him were not insurmountable but rather bridges to connect with those close to him. As they prepared to rejoin the bustling crowd and engage further into Jack's new narrative, he felt a collective weight lift. This was no mere chance meeting. It was the intersection of past, present, and future, where Jack recognized that his once crippling flaws were now powerful lessons woven into the fabric of his evolving identity. Jack stepped back into the warmth of the room, feeling the spotlight of transformation cultivate a tangible air of acceptance among his friends and acquaintances who bore witness to his journey. The alchemy of self-discovery, fueled by collaboration, ignited a sense of belonging he had long thought lost. His heart swelled with justified pride. The chatter around him no longer felt overwhelming, but rather, it hummed with reassurance that each moment served as an invitation for growth. Jack looked around, noting personal achievements framed in joyous eyes, a confirmation that his hard-fought battles respected the light of understanding. In that moment, Jack Malone, once the forgotten professor of biology, had not only reclaimed his narrative from the shadows but reaffirmed his established position within his community. He had graduated from mere existence to meaningful contributions, transforming despair into triumph and vulnerability into strength. Today marked the end of one chapter and the start of another, a future adorned with promise, accountability, and meaningful connection. Jack smiled genuinely, ready to embrace the next step on the journey of not just reclaiming his life, but paving a way forward for others to thrive alongside him. Now is the time for true fans of transformation stories. You need to subscribe now to witness the next saga of emotional evolution. Leave a like right now to ensure you don't miss out on these powerful narratives that inspire resilience. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Jack's complete turnaround. Engagement matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are yearning for their own story of triumph. Let us spread the message of personal overcoming together.